Bryn Renner, former North Carolina quarterback and NFL quarterback, joins me, Brian Murphy, with WRAL, here to talk football, the weekend that passed, maybe what's ahead for North Carolina, some of the other teams in the ACC. And Bryn, thank you so much for joining us. Not a great day if you're a Tar Heel like you are. This was billed, and I talked about it a lot, as kind of a yardstick game. How much progress has North Carolina made from the opener against TCU and after Saturday's game against Central Florida? Fair to question if they made much progress at all.
Yeah, I think there's major concerns. I think, you see, going on the road and playing a decent UCF team that was pretty comparable with the amount of transfers, and it was, it wasn't close for most of the game. And it's unfortunate you're still seeing the same mistakes. And I think you got to look a real picture offensively of what we're doing, how we're doing it. And obviously Gio's health is a concern. We hopefully he can come back healthy, but there might need to be some decisions that made on who takes the snaps going forward for the remainder of the season, or you play both quarterbacks and kind of figure out this year of who the guy is going to be, or you kind of go to the Bryce Baker, Torrey Newkirk type of situation. So there's a lot of things, and thankfully there's a bye week this week to kind of figure it out, but not a good showing on the road, and really kind of some concerns. Especially offensively. I thought that defensively, you can say they kind of kept us in it for a little bit, but when you can't score and convert, third downs especially, and produce points, especially in the red zone, and you throw interceptions and really kind of turn the ball over, it's not going to be a good situation to try to get a win.
We're 4 games into the season, and you're mentioning Torrey Newkirk. This is not the way that I think most Carolina fans thought this season,
Yeah.
the first under Bill Belichick, was going to go. I mean, there's going to be a lot of focus on the quarterback position. Obviously, Max Johnson came in late in the game, once again, seemed to be able to move the offense. As a guy who's been there, you've played. I mean, how much do you risk alienating the team if you keep putting Gio out there? Or obviously it's got to be a coaching decision, but it seems like, can we try somebody else at this point?
Yeah, I think that's got to be a question definitely being brought up. I think you see the production at least Max has had to score, to put points on the board. 19-play drive and scored in the third quarter. And I understand everyone looks at time, score, and who they're playing and who's in. But essentially, as a player, you have to have confidence who that guy is going to be pulling the trigger. So, we've done this a lot of times with bye weeks, especially. It's a good chance, you don't play Clemson for 12 days. Can you get Gio healthy? Is he available to go? If not, who's the guy that's going to be, taking the snaps? I think that's the number one question. Gio's had 24 complete drives versus FBS opponents, and 16 of them ended in three and outs or a turnover. And that's something that has to be assessed. And I think if he's not healthy to go, you got to try to look at Max and see if he can put some points on the board. Also, Brian, I think it's a good time to scale back on what we're doing offensively. It might be too much. And, what have we done well? And I think, coaches, myself being a former coach, you always look at your self-scout. Okay, what running plays are effective? What pass plays have been effective? And then what do the kids like to do well? Like if I was just, putting the quarterbacks in the room, I would say, hey, look, what plays do you like? What plays do you feel like we can find completions and move the football, especially stretching the ball vertically? Like I think we're averaging 6.8 yards per completion. And I think that's just something that has to improve with the vertical passing game. And even the running game. I think, you can't rely on a freshman just to carry the entire load. I think you got to find other guys that can run the ball and be effective. And I think offensively, you just got to take a step back and say, okay, what do we have to get creative? What can we do to move the football and take in the next 12 days when we go play Clemson? And that might be having to shuffle the quarterback room up as well. So there's just things that we're consistently doing not to put points on the board. I'm not saying it's all the offense's fault, but I think you look at the big picture when you can't score in other teams, like you look at the Duke State game that you were at this weekend, it was 45-20. You got to be able to put up points, essentially to win games.
Yeah, plenty of points to be found in that game. Gio's gotten a lot of criticism. Freddie Kitchens, the offense coordinator, is starting to get some criticism. And then I think, eventually some of the criticism is going to fall on Mike Lombardi, the general manager, who put this collection together, was brought in for this specific reason, to build a team. And when you look across the field, and again, I'm not a scout, but I've talked to several of them, what kind of prospects are on this team? What kind of high caliber, all ACC caliber players are on this team? say what you will about the Mac Brown era. There were lots of players, high skilled players, guys who are in the NFL now, guys who were all ACC caliber. I just don't see it now. You can make a lot of excuses for how you had to put this team together, but these guys were being highly paid to do exactly this. And when you look across the board, is there enough talent on that offense for them to compete? Whether it's Gio, whether it's Max, and then whatever scheme you're running.
Yeah, I think 4 weeks in, the answer would probably be no. And I think that's a reality of what the product has been on the field. I never want to give up on quarterbacks because people could have given up on me. That's just the player in me. I never want to give up on a kid and seeing how his career is going to turn around. But I think definitely there's some question marks that have to be answered. And I think that's the rest of the season for honestly by the players as well. I think you mentioned Mike, and I think it's tough to be in a situation where you come in December and try to build a roster in 6 months. But they got enough guys, and there's enough guys on the team to be successful, and other teams are doing it with lesser talent, and you're seeing them win games. So it's got to be a combination of the coaching, the player personnel evaluation, along with the players actually executing. And I think one thing I want to mention is we have to find a leader amongst those 70 new transfers. And it's tough when you bring transfers in that haven't developed a type of cohesion to be a leader and hold guys accountable for not making plays or busting a coverage or not being able to move the ball down the field. I remember there was times where I felt like I wasn't ready to go make enough plays for us to win and had to rely on our defense when Coach Withers was here. And it was, I think we only scored like 14 points against Louisville, and I would jog off the field and it'd be 3-and-out punt, or I would throw a pick. And there was pressure from the defense to be like, hey, do your job. Hey, we need to score points here. Like, you're not getting it done. So I think that accountability factor and a sense of personal pride from the players has to kind of coexist. And I'm just not seeing it on the sidelines. And that just comes from a guys that, when you come from the transfer portal, I hate to say this, but there's a reason why you're in there. Either your coach left and they didn't want you to stay or play, and there's a lot of attributing factors, and that's what kind of takes a little bit to gel. And it looks good on paper, but when you got to play 12 games, you got to find guys that can make plays. And right now, I just don't think we have enough guys that can make plays. We're dropping passes, we're kind of running the wrong routes, and guys are running wide open and touchdowns, and there's just different things that are causing us to lose games. But I think it starts with all three of those, from coaches, player personnel, and the players have to get in a room and say, hey, at the end of the day, it falls on us. And we're not making plays and take accountability for it and try to go forward and compete. And I think that's what the fan base is kind of looking for right now.
When you talked about the defense, and obviously they got, like the TCU game, hung out to dry a lot, right? They're having to go on the field constantly after, turnovers, things like that. There was that busted coverage late in the first half that kind of blew the game open. A lot of penalties on that drive. What are you seeing out of the defense? I mean, we've talked a lot about the offense, but it doesn't seem like the defense is necessarily a dominant unit either.
Yeah, I actually have been pleasantly surprised with the defense, considering, and I say that considering they're on the field for a ton of time. I mean, I think UCF had 33 minutes of possession, a couple long drives that got extended because of plays. The score before half was pass interference and then personal fouls, and so they kind of doing it against themselves. But I know from experience, when you don't have confidence in your offense to go score, it puts pressure on the defense. So it's all the complementary football, the situational football. But I will say this: I think they've improved over the last 4 weeks, but I think you're still seeing signs of a little bit of fatigue for being out there a lot. And they're still holding teams to field goals in the red zone. I think the red zone defense is pretty sound. But the one bust for the touchdown before half, when I don't even think UCF was trying to go get a touchdown. I think they were trying to kick a field goal and just get into halftime. So there's little things like that are kind of breaking down, and that's why I mentioned there's got to be some leaders up there and say, hey, look, we're kind of through 4 weeks, we're having these consistent problems, and we have to step up in these areas and kind of have a sense of personal pride and see who we want to be defensively. I think we're tackling a little bit better. We're playing a more intense physical style, and maybe defensively you got to blitz more. Maybe you got to throw a couple different packages in and get and rotate players and kind of get some fresh legs in there. But I think as a whole, I'm more concerned with the offense and not producing points. But I think defensively you're going to have to figure it out, because you got to play a good Clemson team that's got a little bit of a fire under their belly in about 12 days.
we'll wrap up the Carolina discussion with this. You've been around a lot of teams. You've been around a lot of coaches. You've coached yourself. Certainly Bill Belichick, greatest coach of all time. How do you right a ship in the middle of a season? You're 2-2, not where you wanted to be. UNC still plays its full complement of ACC games. But when things are negative, and certainly there's going to be a lot of negativity around the program in the next 10 days, 12 days before they play Clemson. How do you make sure it doesn't spiral if you're a coach, if you're one of the leaders that you talked about it, or if you're someone like Bill Belichick?
Yeah, I think it's really good that you have a guy that's experienced doing it, and that he's had this situation before, and probably New England and other places. But I think one thing as a coach, you can't panic. Once you show panic, the entire locker room, the entire building feels it. So if it was me, I would be like, okay, look, we have a great opportunity here, fellas, and keep it singularly focused. Hey, look, we have to get better in these areas. And really kind of that's when the coaches and players have to get on the same page and row in the same boat. And I think there can be a time where you take this week off, you reassess the 4 games, and you say, guys, look, we need leaders. You pick a quarterback and you say, we're going full speed. You make decisions on personnel. You say, look, you got to step up and make plays and have these guys, have the players have a sense of personal pride. He can't go out and make plays. And that's what the frustrating thing is. I hate it as a coach going from a player to coach. It's like, I can't go throw the seam ball versus cover 3. I did it. I enjoyed it. But, you got to put the emphasis on it. We need you to do your job. We need to count on you to go perform every single Saturday. And then that's when the players start holding the other players accountable. Right now, I think it's got to be a players only closed door meeting on who we want to be. The coaches can give you all the answers, but as a player, you have to go make plays essentially. So the coaches can do that. What their responsibility is to try to give you the best game plan and scale back the offense, scale back the defense, or make changes and adjustments. But ultimately, when you get that playbook and they say, hey, look, you need to go out and make plays, you got to win your one-on-one matchups at the end of the day. And that's where it comes back to the talent point that you made. Maybe they're not talented enough just looking at the entire roster. But that aside, you have to say, look, we get to go prepare in 11 days to go play Clemson. Play Clemson. Let's see where we are. Let's try to go upset them. And then you have another bye week, and then we go on our ACC run. So you got really basically a 25 to 26 day window where you only play once. So this is a critical time to kind of develop who you want to be.
Let's broaden it out a little bit. The 2 big losses I thought in the ACC this week. Certainly, Florida State rolled on. Miami looked really good against Florida, and Georgia Tech, which kind of emerged as that number 3 team, took care of business against Temple. But NC State was undefeated going into a game against Duke, and Cal on the other side of the country was undefeated going to a road game at San Diego State. They got blown out 34-0. NC State had chances. They were up 20-7 in that game. 4 turnovers, a bunch of special teams mistakes. It's just hard. Let me preface it. It's hard as a college team to win every week. Like even teams maybe you're better than, even games you're winning. Can you talk a little bit about just how difficult it is to do it week in and week out when you're talking 18 to 22-year-olds?
Yeah, it's incredible to keep the intensity up for a 12-week season. And it's every week's a new week. You looked at, yesterday, and I know this is on a grander scheme, but the Browns beat the Packers. I mean, that's just why you play sports. It's the unpredictability of who's going to show up. Like the Bears beat the Cowboys. And then you look at the NC State game, you would think, if Duke loses to Tulane, they would be defeated, but you come back more motivated and you beat NC State. So it's this jostling factor of, can you keep kids focused when they do play well? I always said this is when I played well, I had more confidence. When I played worse, I had less confidence and I wanted to play better. So sometimes these teams coming off a loss, they had the 6-day window to get killed by their coach. They got personal pride. Their parents are mad at them. There's different attributing factors. They're embarrassed by how they played, so they're going to come out and play stronger. So you kind of almost give the edge to the team that lost. And so week in and week out in college football is probably that's why it's the most fun and everyone enjoys it because you never know who's going to show up. Like we would have never thought San Diego State would have beat Cal, and even NC State would have had these turnovers that cost them the game because they were playing pretty well and it was going back and forth, and then the turnovers and the mistakes just cost them. But that's the one thing about the ACC is it's probably the biggest conference where week in and week out you don't know who's going to win. And that's where it's critical that you keep these guys focused on, okay, one thing at a time, because everybody in their minds can get distracted from a lot of different things. But that's the beautiful thing about college football. You just never know.
You're a quarterback, obviously, a former quarterback. You've coached quarterbacks. CJ Bailey has been playing so well for NC
Mhm.
State and actually had a great game. I mean, threw for over 300 yards, made a ton of plays, but he had, 4 turnovers, three
Mhm.
three interceptions, a fumble. When you have a game like that, you put up a bunch of points, you put up a bunch of yards, but you also have critical mistakes that end up leading to your team losing. How do you balance that between, hey, these are the things I did right, but these are the things I did wrong?
I think that's the biggest thing about playing the position is you kept the team in the game until it was a critical moment in third and fourth quarter where you needed plays. So that risk reward factor. I think that's what's great about the position is you get the chance to go watch the film. And you do make mistakes. And that's the hardest thing. And what makes quarterbacks great is how can you respond? I think CJ's playing a really, really good football right now. Even the stats would show you, but the mistakes that he's made is coming from a point of okay, he's definitely fearless. I would say that he plays like that, and the team needs him to play like that. I think it's almost controlling that. Okay, time, score, and situation. I learned this a long time ago. Do I need to fit that ball into cover two right now, or can I check it down and come back to it? But I think it's the necessary evil of like a good 3-point shooter. You don't want him to lose that oh, I'm going to catch and shoot. You don't want him to pass a couple times because I'm tentative. But if you look at the good quarterback play and CJ's having a really good year, I would coach him to be like, okay, do you need to make that throw? Is it the best option, or can you check it down and live to fight another day? Because sometimes when you throw that pick in a critical situation, you just gave up 7 points and or field position for the defense. So giving your defense and giving your team the best chance to win might not be making those unnecessary throws. And early in my career, I had to do that. I went 23 to 24 against JMU, then turned around the next week, Brian, and threw 4 picks, and everyone thought I sucked. And there was this jostling. Okay, well, you're playing JMU, you're playing Rutgers, and then I went on to kind of narrow my focus on I don't have to fit every single ball in. The play might be okay, check it down, let's go get a field goal. Points in kicking the football, either whether it's a punt, a field goal, or an extra point. My coach told me a long time ago, reserve the right to kick. Because sometimes you turn the ball over, you just gave us a chance to kick and field position and things like that. So once you grow and mature as a young quarterback, I mean, he's only going to get better. And I think that's the biggest thing you learn as a quarterback is to make the right decision instead of maybe the decision that would get either a pick or put your team in a situation where you lose the game.
That's Bryn Renner. He's joining us every week here at WRAL. Appreciate the time and enjoy the bye week for Carolina. Hopefully,
Yeah.
if you're a Tar Heels fan, they've made some improvements over this bye week because Clemson, coming in at 1-3, this was a game we thought maybe would be on College Game Day.
Mhm.
Who knows where it's going to be? Well, we'll find out later where it's going to be, but certainly not going to be a College Game Day type atmosphere here in Chapel Hill.
Yep. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll see you soon. Thanks, Bryn.
Yes, sir.